Hey everybody, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today, as you can see, it's going to be Crypt Stalker by a fellow named Sinclair Strange, or at least that's his alias online. This is a indie developed sort of Castlevania homage. It's a lot like Castlevania, but it also has some Vice Project Doom elements, and some elements from other well-known video games that we'll talk about and I'll point out as we go through this game. This is a pretty cool game. This was actually recommended to me a few weeks back by Tax Owl Bear, who's actually been a long-time viewer. So thank you very much, Tax, for recommending this. I actually ended up really enjoying this, despite it being fairly glitchy. Hopefully we don't experience any of those glitches during this run, but it definitely gave me some trouble when I was first playing it, including a whole just like hard lock of the game when I tried playing the handheld mode. So if I hit the start button here, you actually have a whole lot of different options. You've got console game, which is what we're going to be playing through today. You've got handheld game, and then you've got challenge modes under the extras menu and whatnot after you've beaten. I don't know if they're there when you first start, but I've played some of Sinclair's other games, and you have to unlock them in the other games. I think it was pretty much the same in Crypt Stalker. When I first played this, I went straight to console game before checking out all the options and stuff like that. But yeah, there's some cool challenge modes and things like that to give extra replay value, and you do have your options menu with a whole bunch of other features as well. I've always had flickering and slowdown disabled. I'm not sure, how faithful that is to, say, classic NES games when you do enable it, but it is there if you're the kind of person that is into those sorts of options. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and just play through the whole game from start to finish. It's got 9 stages and thus 9 bosses, and the final boss is actually a 3-phase boss fight, or a 3-form boss fight, which is pretty cool, kind of like in Castlevania 3. This game does have a lot of quirks to it. It does not feel like Castlevania. It moves a lot faster, you jump a lot higher, you've got mid-air control, things like that. And there's some other quirks to attacking, especially when you're attacking in the air, and I'll try to touch on those as we play through this game. But we have the original mode and we have casual mode. What we're going to do is play on the original mode. And after you've beaten the game, you can actually select which levels you want to start at. But we're not going to do that. We're going to start at level 1 because we're going to go through the whole game. And that is the Desert Path. Now, there is an introduction to the game. It has a storyline similar to Castlevania where something happens every 100 or so years, and, you're basically what's called a Crypt Stalker, and you have to go and save the world every 100 years or whatever. Kill lots of demons. It's just a good excuse to play a Castlevania-style game. So just like Castlevania, you've got not really candles, but you do have objects floating in the air that you can destroy. They reveal all sorts of different things like money, weapon changes, as well as ammunition. So I mentioned Vice Project Doom earlier, and I'm not sure if this was intentional on Sinclair Strange's part, but there is a weapon system with projectiles. So if I press the B button, I can switch from my whip back over to my gun, and this current weapon is a laser, and you notice that there's an ammunition meter right above the name of the weapon, which is pretty cool. It's a lot like Vice Project Doom. You get 2 different ammo capacity types, one that gives you a bunch of bullets, and then another that just gives you 1. What I like to do is use my guns selectively. I like to try to whip my way through most of this game, if possible, and then save my gun ammo for when I really need it. That's on boss fights. It's also on enemies that are far away, or maybe enemies that are positioned after, like right after a jump or something like that, where it's a little more dangerous to whip. So what I end up doing is just attacking with the gun from long range, or sometimes like right here with the laser, I can cut through multiple enemies with 1 shot. Same with these power-up canisters. I can cut through multiples of those with 1 shot. But you'll notice that my character here moves very, very fast. This is not slow-paced like a traditional Castlevania game is. Enemies do fly at you, and it's very easy to just kind of get out of control and push the screen over too far, or overshoot or undershoot your jumps, things like that. And your character also slides. You'll notice that when you let go, she doesn't stop dead in her tracks. It's almost like Mega Man in a way, where Mega Man doesn't come to a dead stop. We're going to take this right-hand path right here, by the way, because we'll get ourselves an extra life. And there are some tricky parts in this game. There are some parts that, I'm going to want those extra lives. Hopefully we can have a pretty good run where we don't die too many times. But there are some parts in this game that are still kind of a crapshoot for me. But I did do a full practice run right before doing this playthrough, so hopefully I'm warmed up enough to where it's not going to be an issue. So again, you know, you can switch over to your guns if you want to, try to take out some enemies from a distance. Those guys with the spears, they're definitely easier to take out from a distance, although they're not really hard on their own, but it is easier to take them out from a distance. So this is our first boss. You have to really just watch out for his head. And I went ahead and used my gun, which is called High EX. This is probably the best gun in the game. It's very, very powerful. And when it hits enemies, it actually sort of spreads out in like 4 different directions. And so even if you don't hit the enemy directly on, as long as like you're in that range to where the spread will connect, you'll still do some damage, which is nice. You can actually end up using that on the third boss. Where he's got these tentacles that come off that can sometimes block your attacks, but because of the high EX spread shot, or the spread, the blast damage I should say, you can still end up doing damage, which is nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and just, well, I was gonna say I was just gonna whip this guy, but this level introduces a new mechanic, and it's these arrow blocks that will push these platforms upwards or downwards, and I've actually had them glitch out to where I've gotten stuck inside of them, and when that happens you have to either manually restart the level by hitting the start button, or you can let the timer run out, and a lot of times when it glitches out for me, I've got almost maximum time, and so it's better for me to just restart the whole level. So we're gonna do, one thing that's nice about this game is you do have variable jump height, so you can just do like a little baby jump here, and some parts do actually require that in order to get past them. And let's go ahead and go this way. So every few screens you'll get yourself a checkpoint, and you know, so yeah, you do have checkpoints in this game, which is nice. Some checkpoints are a lot nastier than others, but you'll kind of figure out what checkpoints those are as you play through the game. And I do find that if you try to run to the left or right while the flooring is going up, you're more likely to glitch it out. And so what I like to do is to try to just like kind of just jump off of it to stop the scrolling, just like so. If I'm going to try to attack an enemy, I want to make sure the floor is not moving, because I want to minimize my chances of glitching out the platform. There's nothing like getting stuck at a platform and having the game just completely glitch on you. Not very fun. And it, you know, really takes away from what is an otherwise really solid game. Now, kind of like Castlevania Bloodlines, you can actually hold your attack out for a couple more moments than you normally would. So I can just whip like this, or I can hold it, and it'll actually end up doing an extra hit for me, which is nice. And so the guys with the spears, when my whip is powered up, you only get 1 whip power up, by the way. It's not, you know, 2 or 3 like it is in Castlevania. I can just hold that out on the spear guys, and then I'll end up killing them with 1 attack. And so that's actually very handy as well. And almost messed that up right there. One thing that's nice is your whip. You notice that it does go overhead, and that actually damages enemies. Same with the backside when the whip is behind you. So something very good to keep in mind. Now there's also an extra life right here, but I have to make sure I'm just like sort of baby tapping, otherwise I'm just going to run off that ledge. It's very easy to do that in this game. And let's go ahead and just jump over that, and then switch over to my Neuro, which is a different gun type. It's a little bit like High EX, where it's got some splash damage, but it doesn't spread out a lot like the High EX does. So I much prefer the High EX attack, but this is still good too. A lot of the guns in this game actually do not use that much ammunition, and so you're pretty much good to go, just using them almost as much as you want. And, uh-oh. Okay, so... Okay, that glitched out for a second. So only the far left arrow was working. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about with this game. Like, it's a cool game, but when it glitches out, it is not so much fun. So hopefully that doesn't happen too much. That's the first time I've seen that particular glitch where the arrows just don't work. You notice that there have been these hooks so far. All you have to do is just whip them like in Super Castlevania 4. But unlike Super Castlevania 4, all you have to do is just hold down the button, and your character just goes all the way across. You have no real control on them once you actually connect to them. You just need to make sure that your whip does collide with them, otherwise you'll just miss them completely and then fall to your death. And then what's interesting is when you just hold down the button on those chains, your character will automatically whip again after you've let go, which is kind of interesting. Makes it easy to hit multiple chains back to back. So this boss fight has 3 different types of patterns. It's only given me the laser pattern from its eyeballs so far, and you can tell it's going to do that because its eyeballs will blink. It also shoots these enemies across the ground, and then other times it'll open up his mouth. And when it opens up its mouth, all you have to do is just duck, and then you'll avoid its projectiles. But we didn't even see it, which is really odd. Normally it mixes up its patterns a lot better. But there is definitely RNG in this game. Sometimes you're just going to get the same patterns over and over again, and that was the case with this boss. So this is a very pattern-oriented game, but because of the RNG, you're not exactly sure which pattern you're going to get. It's not like the bosses do the same patterns, you know, in the same order every time you play. There is some randomization to it, which has to, you know, it forces you to stay on your toes when you're fighting these bosses. Now this level has a gimmick where you can bust open these pots. Just like so. You don't really get anything from them, but it is something that you can do. It adds a little bit of interactivity to the levels. Same with this water. You can't jump all the way up into the water. It actually pushes you down. Now, there is a water mechanic later on where we have to actually go swimming. And there is an oxygen mechanic, just like in, say, Sonic the Hedgehog or something like that. And these bubbles here, these are air bubbles. So once you cross over them, you'll actually get your air back, like in Sonic the Hedgehog. So like I mentioned earlier on in the playthrough, or at the very beginning I should say, you know, there are elements taken from other games, other popular franchises. So these guys right here, you can actually destroy their projectiles, so if you attack them, time your attack just right, you'll actually destroy their projectiles. And these sort of jellyfish looking things, you don't want to attack them when they're actually lit up. If you do, you'll actually take damage. And so this is the perfect kind of enemy to just shoot with your guns, your projectiles. Now these fish that are constantly spawning, they're basically like bats from Castlevania, except they're featured underwater. And looks like I got the split gun as well, which is a 3-way shot. It's the weakest shot in the game, but it's pretty handy because, you know, it's a spread shot. Spread shots are always pretty handy. There we go. But yeah, we will see more traditional Castlevania bats. They basically do the same thing as those fish that we saw, but they're above ground as opposed to being underwater. These, I don't even know what they are, but when they're on the ground, they almost look like slugs in a way, and they actually leave some goo behind, and when they do that, you'll actually take damage. You don't want to touch that goo, you want to wait for it to disappear. A lot of really basic stuff in this game in terms of, you know, enemy designs and patterns and whatnot, but there are a lot of different enemy patterns to learn, and so, you know, your first playthrough might be a lot more rough than your subsequent playthroughs. So there are the guys with the spears again, or the staffs, I should say. And what they do is they basically do a charge attack that does not go all the way across the screen. And for these guys, I can just sort of duck under them as they go over me. Oops, I was not expecting him to bounce over like that. One issue I do have with this game is that it's sometimes hard to tell, like, what's a foreground object and what's a background object. There are a lot of different tile types, and it, you know, the sort of jumbled mess of tiles will catch you off guard sometimes. It's kind of a personal problem, actually, not so much a game problem. It's one of those things where I just need to take my time and analyze my environments more. But sometimes I'm bad at doing that. And let's see if we have anything over there. Yep, there's some wall meat, just like in Castlevania. There are quite a few instances where you get wall meat in the walls, so, and extra lives as well. Now, you do also get meat from your hanging, I don't want to say candles, and the objects do vary from level to level. Sometimes the floating objects are eyeballs, and you shoot the eyeballs later on, and you'll get power-ups and whatnot. So, yeah, those floating objects do change, much like some Ninja Gaiden games do that, actually. You know, Ninja Gaiden 1 does that in particular. So, yeah. Just making progress here. We're making pretty good progress already. We're already, you know, getting closer to the end of Stage 3. I'd say this is probably one of the longer levels in the game, and I'm gonna guess it's simply because of there being lots of water, and you do slow down. You do move slower underwater than you do, you know, above water. Now that's another neat feature there with the high EX. It actually shakes the ground and can sometimes do damage to enemies, which is also pretty cool. So one thing you want to do in this game is, if you're gonna whip in the air, you need to make sure you're over, over a gap. Don't whip when you're, trying to jump over a gap, because you'll notice that your momentum just kind of stops almost completely when you're trying to whip in the air. I try to whip on the way up if I can, but if you try to whip on the way down, your jump arc just completely changes. And if you're trying to whip over a gap, there's a great chance that you're going to end up falling into that gap. Now, these tentacle arms, I do not believe that you can actually destroy them, but they do almost indicate that they take damage, because enemies do blink in this game when they take damage, and that's how you know you're doing damage. On boss fights in particular, you know you're doing damage because the boss has a health bar, but enemies normally do not have health bars. But I've tried attacking these guys a bunch of times, and I've never been able to kill any of them, so I highly doubt that it's possible. Or if it is, I don't think it's worth it, because you just waste so much ammo. And I actually wasted all my ammo, speaking of which. But there we go, we just beat the boss. And it's not really a big deal that I wasted my ammo, because your ammo does not carry over from level to level. I think you only get 5 or 6 bullets to start a brand new stage, and that's it. So, now you do get some extra points. I think your ammunition gets converted over into points, so if you're the kind of person that's playing for score, then you do want to pay attention to that. So these bugs right here, they just like to jump up, so what I like to do is just wait for them, and then again these guys sort of charge, and then they do this this short range attack. And let's go ahead and use my projectile. And we got the laser. Go ahead and attack these guys. That was actually, I hit them with one shot. My second whip attack didn't really count because I'd already killed them. Alright, so this level's gimmick is this fire that comes up from the bottom. So what you want to do is just wait. The fire is basically on a timer. And you don't want to get caught by it because it will kill you instantly. And that's obviously bad. But I should be good to get this one up, and then just run and jump up this way. Wait for this guy to attack, run back, and then run forward and kill him. And there's some meat. These mummies typically take one hit. They're very easy enemies in the game. Some of them will actually just run back and forth on the same platform, like it's say a red Koopa Troopa from Super Mario Brothers. Other ones will just fall off the ledge, like green Koopa Troopas do in Super Mario Brothers. So a lot of very familiar gameplay tropes in here, and so for those of you guys that play a lot of retro games like I do, you'll feel pretty at home with this game. It's just going to take you a little while to get used to how its movement works. This is just an opinion. I do feel like this game probably would have worked better as a more slower paced traditional Castlevania. Commit to your jumps and things like that. But it is still fun as is. It is still a cool game, and I definitely recommend checking this out. I think it's actually super cheap too, like $3. I think I paid $3 for it. I think when it first came out in October of 2020, I think it was on sale for like $2. So I picked it up later though, a couple weeks later, and so it was $3, but totally worth the price. And Sinclair Strange has some other games available. Some are even cheaper. And I do plan on covering those games, the ones that are available on Steam. I did check out his, apparently he's got a Newgrounds page where he's done a lot of stuff over the years, going all the way back to 2013 and potentially earlier. And there we go. That was my fault. I was, digressing there pretty hardcore and not really paying attention to what I was doing. I was getting really sloppy. But yeah, I do plan on checking out his other stuff on Steam in particular. I've already bought them. And so you guys can expect to see Let's Plays of his other 8-bit style games. He's got one that's not really 8-bit style, but I do plan on trying the other 8-bit style games. And one of them I have already done. It's called Alien Splatter. And it's actually really fun. It's a lot like this one. You can tell it's using the same engine. But it's more of a run and gun as opposed to, a Castlevania clone. So for this guy, when he drops down like that, I want to just keep moving in one direction. And he can do a charge attack after he does his projectiles. And thankfully, he just did his projectiles. I was able to just basically just whip him over and over again. Get those double hits for one shot. And so that boss, he gave us some good RNG. Just like the sort of Sphinx boss on the on the second level. And you got some really good RNG there as well. So, but yeah, watch out for Let's Plays of those games, and you know, feel free to go check these out on Steam if they look interesting to you. I'd say they're definitely worth the money. I mean, he's not charging much at all for these. From what I can tell, he's mainly a hobbyist game developer, so he just kind of does stuff when he feels like it. He doesn't do it for a living, it seems like. So yeah, these things are pretty cheap. Even with the bugs and glitches, you know, for $2 or $3, it's kind of hard to beat. So the gimmick on this level is you can bust open these barrels and boxes, but you also have these switches which turn the lights back on. So there are a couple of parts later on where you need to, you know, make sure you know where the platform edges are. Otherwise, when the lights go out, you're going to end up falling off a platform, which you obviously don't want to do. And let's go ahead and just whip this guy. There we go. And there's another switch right there. It's these blue switches right there. Now, one of my issues with this level, though, this is, you know, again, more opinionated stuff, is that I do find myself trying to whip the candles in the background, but they're not actually candles that you can interact with. On these vertical elevators, I like to just move to the left-hand side. You can do the right-hand side as well. And then I'll just use some projectiles for the enemies that are all the way across the screen. Just a nice, easy strategy. Get my 2 hits on the staff guys, just like so. And you notice that I'm constantly switching. You know, one thing I kind of would have liked is if there was an option to enable, say, instead of switching between the whip and the gun, just allowing the player to, say, press up and attack to activate the gun. That would have been more Castlevania-like, and that would have been very welcome. Sometimes I do get a little disoriented when I'm trying to manage platforming and stuff like that, and you know, especially fast-paced enemies that are flying at me, and trying to switch between my different attack types. Sometimes I'd rather just be able to press up and attack, like it's in Castlevania or something. Now, Vice Project Doom, again, was a game where you did have guns, and in order to use those guns in Vice Project Doom, you would switch over just like you do in this game. So again, I don't know the inspiration that this guy had when he made this game, but it does operate like it does in Vice Project Doom. So if you're a fan of that game, then you should feel right at home with this. Although honestly, I always thought Vice Project Doom was more like a Ninja Gaiden clone than it was a Castlevania clone. I mean, Ninja Gaiden shares you know, some inspiration from Castlevania as well. But Vice Project Doom was definitely a snappier, faster game like Ninja Gaiden was. Yeah, so this game definitely has an interesting dynamic because you do have whipping like it's Castlevania, and the whip is fairly slow compared to your other attacks. But you've got the faster paced movement from Vice Project Doom as well as the gunplay from Vice Project Doom. So this guy, basically, he just jumps around, and then he makes blocks fall from the ceiling, and that's pretty much it for him. He's not too difficult to deal with. But yeah, on to Stage 6. Again, making good progress. Again, there are only 9 levels in the game, but I would say Stage 6 is probably where the game starts to get fairly challenging. There are some tough parts, you know, on earlier stages, but this is where the game starts to turn into a much more difficult experience. So now, it's going to be a lot harder on your first playthrough, obviously, but once you kind of know what to do, it's actually not too bad. So for these spikes, sometimes I like to just jump over them like that, as opposed to going underneath them. These guys that just appear out of nowhere, what they do is they appear once and then they disappear, and then that's it. And so sometimes you can just avoid them completely. But what I like to do is try to switch over to my gun and then just shoot them. I'm going to go ahead and just attack. Oops, that was my fault. Did not mean to do that. Now, this game does have a mechanic like, say, classic Contra, where if the screen gets pushed downwards and your platforms disappear, you will end up dying if you stay in that place or you try to fall back down to where the platforms were. The screen does not scroll the other way. Once it scrolls, it's pretty much done. And looks like that's interesting. Some meat did not appear, even though that's a wall that can be busted open. So let me go ahead and just shoot these guys from a distance. And take my time here. There we go. So these are conveyor belts, so you have to watch out for those. They can be really nasty. You have to really focus on the direction they're going. Otherwise, they'll catch you off guard. You'll land on one that's moving, you know, in the opposite direction, and you'll just end up flying right off the ledge, which has happened to me several times, actually. Alright, so this is the laser. The laser is actually pretty good for this part because it cuts through multiple enemies. It's fairly weak in the grand scheme of things, but, you know, the fact it does cut through multiple enemies makes it highly useful. Some of these bats that are on ceilings like that, they actually dive down and then go across the screen exactly at the same level that you're at. So that's something that you have to pay attention to as well. Other bats will, you know, just kind of spawn on the screen every few seconds like they do in Castlevania. Now, unfortunately, some of the mechanics aren't as nuanced as they are in Castlevania. For instance, in Castlevania, the bats will fly onto the screen based on what side you're facing. That does not happen in this game. They just always come in from the right-hand side. They do the exact same thing at the exact same intervals. And so yeah, there is definitely some missing depth in this game, or some nuance, I should say, that Castlevania has that this does not. So I need to just jump over here. One interesting thing about stairs, if you're used to Castlevania, you're going to be pressing down or up on them. You don't need to do that in this game. In this game, you latch onto them automatically, and you just don't slip off of them. So you just jump on them. It's like they're solid platforms in this game, as opposed to something that you can just clip through in Castlevania. Alright, so let's go ahead and just try to take our time here. Looks like these platforms behind us aren't really spawning in at a good rate, so I have to stay on that one platform. Alright, just whip that guy, just like so. And again, we're making pretty rapid progress here. We're just gonna fall down like so, and then get a 2-hit combo on that guy. Just attack him once, and I'm gonna actually use my split attack here. Again, you can see it's fairly weak, but the spread shot does come in handy, especially later on. And that's a big weapon clip right there. And that's a small weapon clip that he dropped. Oops. And it looks like sometimes you don't get the double hit. I think you might have to just hit him with the fatter end of your whip in order to get it. And you'll notice that there's a bat over there, so I'm going to go ahead and just try to shoot him with my projectile. And unfortunately it failed, because this split projectile does not go all the way across the screen. And this part right here, that's actually not the one I'm thinking of. I need to do a baby jump. But there's a bat over there, and I can just do a full jump here. And you notice that there was that hook, but I find it's actually a lot easier to just do a baby jump. And then there's that hook. You notice that my character, she just kept sliding as I landed here after I landed from that hook. You've got to watch out for that. I've actually fallen off that platform multiple times, and it's very frustrating because she keeps sliding, which is aggravating to say the least. So this is not like Castlevania, where when you land on the ground, you just stop completely. It doesn't work like that in this game. So if you're like me and you're a huge Castlevania fan, and you've played a lot of Castlevania over the years, this is going to take some adjusting. It definitely is. There we go. And this probably has one of the nastier bosses in the game too. You'll see what I mean. It takes, homage. It sort of pays homage to Sonic the Hedgehog, the very first one where you fight Dr. Robotnik in his last form. So for those of you guys that have played that game, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Except here, it's very easy to die instantly. That was a good little jump right there. Almost took a hit. But yeah, very, very easy to die instantly here. And there we go, there's some meat. And so what we need to do is watch for the platforms and then move instantly. If you do not, you'll get crushed and you will die instantly. And you have to hit that green guy that's inside these platforms. I prefer to jump and attack him. I have a tendency of getting more hits that way, as opposed to attacking while I'm on the ground. Let's hope that we can get this on our first try. There we go. Oh! Oh, I got so lucky. It was oh my god, twice! Beneficial malfunction? That's what we say in pinball competition. I'll take it, man. I hate dying here in one hit. I hate dying here in one hit. Wow. So that's actually the first time the game's glitched out in a beneficial way. Oh, that's not true. There is another beneficial way where the game can glitch. And it hasn't done it this way yet on this playthrough. I did it on my previous playthrough in my practice session, and that is it'll just keep giving you extra lives infinitely. You'll hear a little chime indicating that you've gotten an extra life, and it'll just keep doing that, you know, over the course of the game randomly, and you'll just never go below 9 lives. So these new enemy types, they shoot these projectiles, and so those projectiles are kind of randomized. But then they explode into those little eyeball-looking things, so you have to be careful about them. Just trigger that attack, and then attack him, just like so. Now this level does have some, you know, some falling platforms, or breakaway platforms as well. I'm just gonna snipe this guy, because they're a little annoying to attack up close. And there we go. But I have to watch out for the little eyeballs that, you know, remain. Alright, so back to the split attack. And I'm going to go ahead and actually just jump over this way. Let's just skip that enemy completely, because those were actually breakaway platforms there. So this is a new gimmick. This is taken from Castlevania 3, where the screen basically has to scroll up at its own accord. On its own accord. And a bunch of jellyfish floating in the air here, so I like to try to just kill those guys from a distance. You notice that, you know, again, the platforms disappear from the bottom of the screen, meaning that I can just get pushed underneath and just die instantly, and that's never any fun. Now, what I prefer to do is try to stay, you know, a little bit closer to the middle of the screen on this, you know, falling platform section, or falling screen section. I don't even know what you want to call it. I don't even know how to describe this kind of mechanic. I guess it's like a form of an auto-scroller, but this isn't really what I think when I think auto-scrollers. I think the screen is constantly in motion with auto-scrolling sections, which is not this. It goes down, and then it stops, and then it does it again. You know, it's like on a timer almost. I'm gonna go ahead and just attack this guy from a distance. I have plenty of ammunition, so I'm just trying to play it safe here. And there we go, and that's, you know, there was a platform there. So this is a section where you gotta watch out for these platforms. The gimmick here is that, you know, these platforms, visually they disappear. The platforms themselves are actually still there. It's just, you know, they disappear from your view, and so you have to know exactly where they are in order to not fall down into a pit. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get close to this guy. I don't mind if I take a couple hits. It's okay. You get plenty of health refills in this game, and that was a time refill right there as well. So another section where we have to go up vertically. Just gonna wait for this guy. Don't want to get too greedy. If I get greedy against those guys, I take a lot of damage. And just like, you know, a lot of classic NES games, there is knockback. So you gotta be careful about the knockback in this game. Especially on a section like this, where the platforms will just disappear underneath you, and you might end up taking a hit from an enemy, and then, you know, you'll end up getting knocked into an endless pit where there was once a platform, and that's frustrating. Another extra life, up to 7 lives. Alright. Now we're gonna have some bats here, and for this part you can kind of just run right through it, but then you need to stop because there's an enemy right here. Let's go ahead and hit this thing from a distance. And shoot these guys from a distance as well. Wait for this guy to jump up. And then, there we go, just like that. Alright, boss time. So this guy, I want to shoot him from a distance, and if he dashes forward like that, I want to try to run underneath him. Because a lot of times what he'll do is he'll dive down to the ground, bust a hole through the ground, and then I'll fall to my death. And these projectiles will also cause the platforms to disappear. And I'm surprised he actually hasn't done it. Normally this guy is really mean. He always likes to dive bomb me. See, I'm kind of disappointed that the bosses are being really nice to me in this playthrough because I'm not able to show you the patterns. I want to show you all the patterns, but I can't because they're not doing them half the time. Which is interesting. So, you know, whatever. If you decide to pick this game up and try it out for yourself, you will most certainly experience them, and you'll experience the frustration that comes along with it. So here the floating objects now are eyeballs, like I talked about earlier. Now this level has a couple of things I'm not a huge fan of. One of them is that the spikes, which are these things above and below me, are a little difficult to see. They're not discolored like you would expect spikes to be. And so when you're rushing through the game, you're going to end up hitting them accidentally. And so that's something that you have to get the hang of, and you have to be very well aware of. Like, these are spikes on the ground. Sort of crystalline spikes, if you will. So we just have to pay attention, basically. Again, killing these guys from a distance because it's a lot safer, but they take a lot of hits, especially with the laser. Laser is not a very powerful weapon, but it's balanced out by the fact that it cuts through multiple enemies. So we're back with the split weapon. Oh, no, back to the laser. And again, more arrows here, which pushes the platforms in one direction or the other. Alright, there we go. Definitely want that ammunition. Alright, so for this part, we just want to keep running and jumping. Otherwise, we'll end up falling down that pit and dying. Gotta go ahead and get rid of these guys first, and then slip on one arrow, and then just stay in place. Again, I just like to stay in place so I don't glitch things out. I've had these arrow sections glitch up. Well, I guess we're restarting the level. So, right as I was saying, I've had them glitch out on me so much, they glitch out on me. And you know what's funny? I don't know if I actually lost a life for that, but what I did lose is my upgraded whip, which means I'm a lot less powerful now, which is disappointing. So, let's see if I can just fling across like this, or not. That's extremely frustrating. It's the big thing I don't like about this game is it is buggy and it is glitchy, and that's never a cool thing. You know, for the cheap price that it is, I can let it slide in a way, but it does make the game much more aggravating than it should be. I mean, there are already several challenging parts that I know a lot of players are going to struggle with, and then, you know, basically having to fear like moving on these platforms at the same time, you know, with the potential of them glitching out, is just makes things even worse. And so we'll see what happens next time, but that's why I said, like, I like to just make sure I stand in place, because it seems when I don't stand in place and I move as they go up, that I end up running into issues. Alright, just stay straight on the platform. Don't move. There we go. Nope, I have to move it up. Yeah, when that glitch happens too, it just like completely kills my personal momentum, and I just don't care as much, which makes the game, it has the negative effect of the game just not being as much fun, because I just don't feel like playing it anymore. So, but alright, more water. And again, notice that I move a lot slower underneath water, so my jumps are much tighter now. I have, oops. And I just did it again. Exactly what I was talking about earlier is I am not paying attention and I ran right into those spikes. And I did it again, just even after mentioning it, I still did it. And that's where I feel like, you know, spikes like that should be discolored. They should stand out a little bit more. They shouldn't blend into the background, or you know, make them look like they're inanimate objects that don't hurt you. So, there are other points of the game where you do have to fend against spikes. On the final level, actually, there's spikes, but they're discolored, so it's obvious that, you know, they're objects that are going to hurt you. Whereas the spikes on this level, it's not so obvious. So back to the lava mechanic again. Pretty easy mechanic to deal with as long as you're taking your time. Probably a lot harder if you're trying to speedrun the game. But you just wait, and then wait for it to go down, and then you can just fly through. You can just jump over these enemies if I want to. And actually, there's that right there. Yeah, you can see that I've just gotten completely lazy now. You know, I've just gotten completely sloppy, whereas the earlier part of my playthrough was a little bit tighter. But now it's just all slop because the glitch. I just don't care anymore, you know. So, all right. So for these sections with the single blocks, a lot of times you've got bats that like to go across the screen, and so you just got to watch out for those guys. The green bats here, they just fly down and just dive towards wherever you are on the screen. Pretty easy to deal with, but if you're not paying attention, they will catch you off guard. And just like the previous elevator earlier on, a few stages back, I do the exact same thing. I just stay on one side of the screen. Doesn't really matter which side, but I usually prefer the left-hand side. And then just shoot from the distance. And that's pretty much it. I think that's the last section for this elevator part. The wall busts open, and you can just keep progressing. Alright, so we have another light section here, but again, you know, the light switch is not discolored the way it was on the cave level earlier. So, you know, it's going to take you a couple tries to even realize that the switches are there. Yeah, so a couple of design choices you know, personally, if I had the choice, I would have done differently to make the game just kind of like play and flow a little bit smoother. You know, just some light, you know, touch-ups here and there. Like I would have made these switches a different color. But it's not my game, you know. We like to, as you know, sort of critics, some of us like to, you know, complain. But we have to realize sometimes it's not our games, and sometimes things were made for very specific reasons. Even if we would have liked them to be done differently, you can't do anything about that. Although, see, there we go. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier. If the platforms below you disappear, and you fall down to where they were, you die instantly. The same thing happens in Classic Contra on NES. And I'm not saying that's a good design choice. But if you played Classic Contra, then, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's try this again. I do like when developers are open to, you know, kind of criticism like this, though. I know some homebrew authors in, say, the Atari Jaguar scene that, that actually do take feedback like that to heart, and, you know, they do make adjustments to their games accordingly, which is nice. So hopefully, you know, some of these developers of modern indie homebrews, you know, might end up doing the same thing. Maybe they'll go back and patch their games or something like that if more people speak up. Again, I'm totally blaming all these mistakes on the fact that the game glitched out on me. I literally just don't give two craps right now. Like, I'm just not focusing anymore. Doesn't help that I'm tired as well. And I do find that I'm less likely to remain focused after some screw-ups that aren't really my fault. When I'm tired, I'm less likely to keep carrying. That conveyor belt there, in the middle one, was moving towards the right, so I had to watch out for that. It's very easy for those to catch you off guard. Now, I did play a little bit of Alien Splatter, and actually not even just a little bit. I think I played quite a bit of it. I got, I think, at least 3/4 of the way through the game before, you know, moving on to something else. Because I wanted to focus on this game first. I wanted to make sure I already had my Let's Play recorded of this before I start focusing on another Sinclair Strange game. But I didn't have that game glitch out on me. So it's possible that Crypt Stalker here might get fixed. Not even sure if all the bugs have been detected yet, but I do know that his QA team was extremely small, something like one person. So, and I'm not sure how much of the player base that's actually purchased the game has experienced these things. And the other thing about PC gaming in particular is that, you know, some glitches might be more likely to happen on certain systems than others, certain configurations. So it gets pretty dicey, you know, troubleshooting PC game technical issues. But hopefully this stuff can get ironed out, because it is a good game otherwise, and I am definitely willing to recommend it to people left and right, as long as, you know, things do kind of get ironed out. I love seeing these homages to classic NES games, and you know, because I grew up with the NES. I started with an Atari 2600, but the NES was, you know, that was my first system, and that was the system that, you know, I spent a huge part of my early years on, and I still spend a lot of my current years on it. You know, so. But, you know, it definitely stings a little bit when you've got something that's clearly had a lot of, you know, heart and soul put into it, but ends up having lots of, you know, performance problems, glitches, freezes, things like that. So I'm just trying to take my time here as I rant on about polish issues. So that little chime that just happened, that was actually the extra life chime. And again, one of the glitches is you'll just get those chimes all over the place. Like a screen transition will happen. That's usually when it happens, is you'll just get an extra life for going to a new screen. But that has not happened in this playthrough. Now, I did notice that my score is a hell of a lot higher now than it normally is. Normally my score is around 300,000, and I have no idea why I would get so many more points. So yeah, I'm not really sure what's happening there. So this is kind of a mirror match here, and what I like to do is just use the high EX and just shoot her over and over again. It does a lot of damage. And she wasn't really doing anything, she was just jumping around. She'll also shoot, she'll also whip. But again, it seems like what all the bosses do in this game is just completely up to RNG. Just totally random. Alright, so we're on to our final level. This level actually isn't all that bad. It's not too bad to go through. But we're going to actually fall through sort of an illusory platform right here. That is normal. That is supposed to happen. I've actually intentionally killed myself, seeing if I can jump over it, but I can't. And here are the spikes that I was talking about. They're actually, you know, discolored. So you know they're probably bad. But you do have these breakaway platforms that you gotta watch out for. So definitely a level where you kind of want to pay attention to what you're doing. And I'm just holding down the button right there. Remember, your character will just automatically whip again after, you know, flinging off one of those hooks. Oops, wasn't paying attention. And we're just gonna wait. I'm gonna actually shoot this guy from a distance. Just like so. Oops, I got a little greedy right there. I thought I could just run across, but I failed. That was my fault. One thing I haven't really commented on is the soundtrack, and you know, this Sinclair Strange guy, he, according to the credits, he did pretty much everything on his own, including the music. And from what I can tell, it's the same thing with his earlier titles as well. And dude obviously knows what he's doing. Yeah, it's some really fantastic NES style music here. It's got a really good soundtrack overall. So if you're into that type of stuff, yeah, you'll really appreciate the soundtrack. And we've got some gold bounds, kind of like in Castlevania 4. And this dog thing right here will just keep running back and forth, so I just like to wait for it to go in the opposite direction and then try to whip it. Some of these are breakaway platforms, others are not. Like that's one right there. I'm gonna keep running right here. And then I'm gonna shoot this guy from a distance. Just like so. there's definitely some method to be had in this game, absolutely. And figuring out what that method is, the methodology that you use, you know, it's gonna take some trial and error. You're probably not gonna figure it all out in your first try. Remember on my first playthrough, I did die quite a bit, and ironically in my first playthrough, the extra life glitch happened. And so I was able to try these levels out over and over again without having to redo them from scratch. Now this is one of those games where I don't believe you get continues. I believe it shoots you back to the title screen, and then you have to just reselect the level when you start a new game. So basically the level that you've gotten to, or the last level you got to, will be selectable to try again. That's how you continue in this game. And it was the same way with his Alien Splatter game as well that I tried. I had to actually continue there because I didn't get any extra life glitches. But this is our final boss. We might end up dying here because I'm not going to have full health. You know, we'll see what we can do. So the first phase, what I want to do is get in front of him and then duck. So duck, and then duck, and then move, and then duck and attack. Move, and then duck and attack. Okay, he's teleporting a lot. A lot of times he just kind of sits in place and just keeps attacking. Very much like the fire guy earlier, you just want to keep in motion. Alright, so this part is a little bit more difficult, and what I want to do is try to save my guns for the third phase, which is actually a bit of a Mega Man 4 style throwback. So you can hit his arms, you can hit his eyeballs. Occasionally he'll spit enemies out of his mouth, so you have to watch out for those. And a good strat is just to kind of stay in motion here. Nice little duck. I actually avoided that enemy from ducking. That was good. Did not avoid that though. Okay, there we go. Alright, on to phase 3. And for phase 3, I'm just going to shoot him with my gun. So you kind of want to just stay away from him after he shoots his projectiles, because as you can see, they go into, you know, they spin around. And that's it. We just beat Crypt Stalker. But yeah, I mean, quite a few parts of that playthrough were actually pretty decent, I would say, but there were some other parts where I just started to get really, really sloppy, and, you know, glitching into the ground is exactly what did it for me. That happens to me on stream all the time. If something dumb happens to me like that, my mind just starts to blank out, especially if I'm ranting about something like the glitch, or I'm complaining about something that's opinion-oriented. It takes my focus off, you know, the eye-hand coordination aspect of the game, and I end up losing. So yeah, we got a little sloppy there for a couple levels, unfortunately. But that's kind of the experience you could expect from Crypt Stalker. I mean, if you're brand new to the game, you might run into some of those glitches, unless, you know, since this recording it's been patched. I have seen on the fellow's Twitter that, you know, he's aware of some of the glitches. I'm not sure what glitches, and that he is planning on patching it. But that was a few weeks ago, as of doing this video, and I haven't seen an update from the game yet. My Steam's connected online. There was no update for this, but yeah, hopefully it does get patched in the future, because it's a really solid game, actually. It's a very solid game, which is why I'm excited to check out his other 8-bit style efforts. And, yeah, the glitches definitely leave sort of a bad taste in my mouth with this one. I really hope it gets fixed up, because, you know, I really want to be able to recommend this to you know, everyone that's a fan of Castlevania and 8-bit style games, because it really is very cool. It's a very cool game. And there's still a lot of other stuff to show off too that I'm unfortunately not going to show off here, because we've been playing for almost an hour already. But there's a classic 8-bit style mode where it's modeled more after Castlevania the Adventure, and it's got the challenge mode as well, and it's cool, you know, especially for the price. It's very cool. I do recommend it, but you just gotta watch out for those glitches that I hope eventually get fixed. Sooner rather than later, hopefully. I hope this isn't one of those games. And I've bought several games on Steam that have been like this, where, you know, the glitches kind of suck all the fun out of them and they're never fixed. I've got a few games like that. I wouldn't say this is that bad to where like the game's completely broken, but you can have a run like I just did where you just get all the fun just zapped right out of it, and that's no fun. So but yeah, that's Crypt Stalker, guys. If you have any questions or comments, you know, feel free to post a comment down below. This is on Steam. Just search for Crypt Stalker on Steam, and you will find it. It came out the end of October 2020. So if you're watching this as of doing this upload, it's a fairly recent release. But yeah, go check it out. And if not, you know, at least post something down below. Let me know you got to this point in the video, and let me know how you enjoyed this. And especially let me know if you want to see his other 8-bit efforts. I'm probably going to end up doing them sooner rather than later anyway, but I always love to hear your thoughts on these things regardless. So yeah, if you want to see those, let me know. But yeah, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to my channel and you liked this playthrough, please subscribe. I've got plenty of playthroughs like this on my channel and many, many more to come. For everyone already subbed, thanks as always for your continued support. And until the next one, take it easy.